Have you ever wondered if the peace in Europe is as stable as it seems? Nearly 30 years after a devastating war, a small Balkan nation, Bosnia and Herzegovina, is teetering on the edge of a crisis that could send shockwaves across the continent. This isn't just a local issue. It's a story about lingering ethnic tensions, high-stakes political maneuvering, and a stark warning for the future of Europe. To understand what's happening today, we need to go back to 1995. The Bosnian War, a conflict that saw over 100,000 people lose their lives and millions displaced, ended with a US-brokered peace agreement known as the Dayton Accords. This agreement was a masterpiece of compromise, designed to stop the bloodshed. It created a complex but functional state, dividing Bosnia and Herzegovina into two main entities. The Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, primarily home to Bosniaks and Croats, and the Republika Srpska, predominantly inhabited by Serbs. It also established a multi-layered government with a rotating tripartite presidency, shared between a Bosniak, a Serb, and a Croat representative. For a time, this fragile peace held. The country began to rebuild, and people dared to hope for a future free from conflict. But the seeds of today's crisis were sown within the very structure designed to keep the peace. The Dayton Accords, while successful in ending the war, effectively froze the ethnic divisions in place. Politics became a zero-sum game, where leaders often appealed to nationalist sentiments rather than a shared Bosnian identity. Fast forward to the 2020s, and this simmering pot of ethnic nationalism is boiling over. The central figure in this recent turmoil is Milorad Dodik, the longtime leader of the Bosnian Serbs and a member of the country's tripartite presidency. For years, Dodik has openly talked about the secession of Republika Srpska from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He has called the country an impossible state and has taken concrete steps to undermine its central institutions. In late 2021, the crisis escalated dramatically. Dodik initiated moves to withdraw Republika Srpska from key state institutions, including the armed forces, the judiciary, and the tax system. He essentially announced plans to create a separate army and legal framework for the Serb-controlled entity. These actions were a direct challenge to the Dayton Accords and the very foundation of the Bosnian state. Imagine a U.S. state declaring its intention to leave the Union and form its own military. That's the scale of the constitutional crisis we were talking about. This wasn't just rhetoric, it was a clear and present danger to the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The international community, especially the United States and the European Union, sounded the alarm. They warned that these moves were illegal, destabilizing, and could lead to a renewed conflict. So, why is this happening now? There are several factors at play. First, there's a growing sense of frustration within Republika Srpska. Many feel that the central government in Sarajevo doesn't represent their interests. Nationalist narratives, fueled by politicians and media, have reinforced a sense of victimhood and historical grievance. Dodik has skillfully tapped into this sentiment, positioning himself as the sole defender of Serb interests against perceived threats from Bosniaks and the international community. Secondly, the geopolitical landscape has shifted. Russia, a traditional ally of the Serbs, has become more assertive in the Balkans, offering political and diplomatic support to Dodik. This has emboldened his separatist ambitions, making him less susceptible to pressure from the West. The Office of the High Representative, a body created by the Dayton Accords with the power to impose laws and dismiss officials, has been a key player. In 2021, the outgoing High Representative used his powers to outlaw genocide denial, a move that particularly angered Dodik and his supporters, who have long resisted acknowledging the Srebrenica. This act, while morally just, became the trigger for Dodik's escalatory moves to withdraw from state institutions. The United States has responded with targeted sanctions against Dodik and his allies, aiming to cut off their financial resources and isolate them politically. Washington has repeatedly stressed its unwavering commitment to Bosnia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The U.S. has also supported the continued presence of EU4, the European Union's peacekeeping force, and has strongly advocated for Bosnia's path toward NATO and EU membership. as the best guarantee for long-term stability. However, the effectiveness of these measures is debatable. Sanctions have so far failed to significantly alter Dodik's course, and the European Union has been criticized for its own internal divisions and lack of a unified, firm strategy. Some EU member states are hesitant to take a hard line against Dodik, fearing further destabilization. This division has created a vacuum that nationalist leaders are all too happy to exploit. The human cost of this political brinkmanship is immense. Ordinary Bosnians, regardless of their ethnicity, are tired of the constant crisis. They are struggling with a stagnant economy, widespread corruption, and a lack of opportunities. Every year, thousands of young, educated people leave the country in search of a better life elsewhere. This brain drain is hollowing out the country, leaving behind an aging population and a political system dominated by the same nationalist figures who have held power for decades. The rhetoric of division and fear prevents any meaningful progress on the real issues that affect people's daily lives, jobs, healthcare, and education. Many people feel like hostages in a political game they have no control over, forced to relive the traumas of the past. So, what happens next? The situation remains incredibly fragile. There are a few potential paths forward. The worst-case scenario is a slide back into armed conflict. While most observers believe this is unlikely, given the lack of appetite for war among the general population, it cannot be entirely ruled out. The actions of a few reckless politicians could easily spark violence that spirals out of control. A more likely scenario is a prolonged period of instability and political paralysis, where Bosnia remains a dysfunctional state, unable to move forward. This would essentially be a frozen conflict, leaving the country in a permanent state of limbo, vulnerable to external influence and internal decay. The best-case scenario involves a renewed and unified diplomatic push from the United States and the European Union. This would require putting serious, coordinated pressure on all nationalist leaders, not just Dodik, to abandon their divisive agendas and commit to genuine reform. It would mean strengthening state institutions, tackling corruption head-on, and creating economic opportunities that give people a reason to stay and build a shared future. It also means empowering civil society and supporting voices that advocate for reconciliation and a common Bosnian identity, rather than ethnic division. The crisis in Bosnia and Herzegovina is a stark reminder that peace is not a final destination. It's a continuous process that requires constant vigilance, compromise, and commitment. The ghosts of the 1990s still haunt the Balkans, and the political firestorm in Bosnia shows just how easily they can be reawakened. What happens in this small corner of Europe matters to all of us. It's a test of the West's resolve to uphold the principles of democracy and international law, and a warning that the specter of ethnic conflict has not been banished from the continent. The future of Bosnia, and in many ways, the stability of Europe, hangs in the balance. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into complex global issues. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.